Welcome to the introductory episode of the Subjective Professor podcast. First thing I want to do is thank all of my students from this semester, spring 2023, for inspiring me and motivating me to finally get this podcast off the ground. But I've been teaching full-time at a university for 17 years and as an adjunct for 4 or 5 years on top of that. And over the years, I've noticed that the nature and character of the conversations that people have with each other outside of the classroom and in the classroom has changed dramatically. Back in the day, if I can say something like that, back in the day, people would engage in conversations to hear different points of view, to learn things that they didn't know before, to exchange ideas, to bounce ideas off of each other. But this doesn't happen all that often in classrooms today. And that's what a lot of my students tell me anyway. Instead, this desire to exchange ideas and have conversations has been replaced with the desire to be right. So if you are right, you get to shut down everybody else. You get to feel better. You get to feel like you're superior to everyone else around you. Now, they don't confess that. They don't admit to that. They just simply say, well, you're wrong and I'm right, right? And there's a certain feeling of satisfaction that comes with being able to say that. And so more and more people are going to strive to be able to say that, put themselves in a position where they're going to be able to say that. Now, to give you, to illustrate what I mean, I'm going to show you a picture of Donald Trump. Here's a picture of Donald Trump. I know a lot of people say, I didn't know Donald Trump looked like that, but Donald Trump is red, okay? So Donald Trump is red. Everyone around you has said Donald Trump is red. The news media says Donald Trump is red. A lot of people in positions of authority have said Donald Trump is red. And so you naturally are going to go along and say, yeah, sure, Donald Trump is red. And then you meet someone who says, no, excuse me, Donald Trump is actually blue-green. Now, you might question this person and you might say, hey, no, clearly an honest mistake, but Donald Trump is red. And that person says, no, I don't see it. Donald Trump is blue-green. And you're like, blue-green? No, there's something wrong. I think you were miseducated. I think that maybe, you have a lot of misinformation. It might also be that you are a white supremacist. It might also be that you're just basically a racist. So you got to change your mind. And that person says, no, I think the problem is in your side, right? Your perspective, you have the problems, but clearly I know what I can see. And so if one group comes to power, they may be tempted to write a rule or a regulation that says anyone who sees Donald Trump has to say that he's red. Now, I'm using Donald Trump as an example, but understand that this piece of paper could be a picture of Joe Biden. This could be a representation of climate change. This could be a representation of Russia, of Putin. It doesn't really matter, but the conversations follow the same pattern. And so instead of trying to persuade someone or even trying to understand why other people are going to look at this picture and say blue-green, no one's really interested, right? No one is interested in trying to understand why some people will look at Donald Trump and say Donald Trump is blue-green. It's easy, right? Because from their perspective, what they see is blue-green. And from their perspective, they really can't understand why you keep calling him red. So even if you were to pass a law that says that you must say red, yeah, you're going to see, you're not going to convince anyone. You're not going to get anyone to change what they believe. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to create a whole lot of criminals. And we're going to get into the problem of, this is one of the things that we're going to try to avoid, trying to force other people to agree with you, right? And so instead of people trying to understand why some people see blue-green, why some people see red, we're just going to call each other names. All right. And this is the problem that we see today. We see this happening all over the place. People are not really interested in understanding how other people can come to different conclusions and different understandings. It's now all about being right. So learning and education conversations and dialogue, discourse, debate, all of this stuff has gone out the window. Information is no longer there for us to learn, perhaps accept or reject, or try to decide if there's maybe a better interpretation, or maybe there's something better out there. Information has now become weaponized, right? So information exists now in order to cancel other people, in order to silence other people, in order to demonize other people. This is the official information. This is what is right. And so therefore, anyone who disagrees with this, well, they're just simply wrong. We'll even call them racist every now and again. And so it is no longer, okay, which side has a better argument, which side has a better grasp of things, of reality. No, now it's whoever is loudest, whoever has the most supporters, whoever has control of the government. You know, these are the people now who get to decide what everyone has to believe. And in this particular kind of climate that we see all around us, and believe me, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you are blessed. Okay, I think you're very, very lucky. But in many situations, particularly in the university these days, people are afraid to speak their mind. They're afraid to say and express their opinions because they're afraid that they might lose their job, they might lose their friends, other people might start coming after them, harassing them, not giving them moments of peace, a moment of peace. So how are we going to go about discussing this phenomena? And if you notice, I did not say what red or blue-green represented. I mean, people will read into it and say, oh, you mean these people say that. I mean, some people will do that, but the reality is that it goes back and forth. It could be either, you know, anyone could walk away or listen to that conversation and say, oh, I know who's who. But we don't really, because it could be anyone. And so how do we have a conversation where everyone has become so polarized? And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to observe two rules. And I ask that everyone in my classes always follow these two rules. And this ensures that we can actually have a discussion that maybe for the majority of students, there might be some kind of learning and education the way we used to do it back in the day. So the first rule is there can be no coercion. Coercion is force. So just imagine the bully, the school bully when you were younger. And if your school did not have a bully, props to you. But anyway, a lot of people recognize the behavior of bullies because they don't really have a lot of knowledge. They use brute force to get what they want, okay? So it has nothing to do with what's right or wrong. It's just brute force. So in these podcast episodes, we are not going to allow or use force as a solution, right? So no one can force anyone else to believe, say, think, or do anything that they don't want to. And so we have to engage in persuasion. The second rule is there can be no hypocrisy. Now, this is a tricky one, primarily because the dictionary has so screwed up the definition that a lot of people don't have precisely a good definition of what hypocrisy is. Most of us, when we see it, we know it, right? But a good definition of hypocrisy would not be the definition you find in the dictionary, which is someone who pretends to have morals that they don't actually have. That's what you'll see in the dictionary. But my definition of hypocrisy is much more simpler. Double standards, right? A person who has double standards, a set of standards for one group of people and a different set of standards for another group of people. Okay. So imagine your parents tell you don't lie, but then you catch them lying. So what is it? Did they pretend to have morals that they don't actually have, or is it something else? And I would say, no, that's hypocrisy. But the reason why they do it without feeling any kind of guilt is because they know why they lied. And so they're willing to go easier on themselves rather than going easy on anybody else. And so it's a different standard that most people have for themselves as opposed to the standards that they have on other people. It's very easy to fall into this trap. Everyone is a hypocrite until they realize that they're engaging in hypocrisy. And at least for my part, for my own life, I constantly find other ways that I'm being hypocritical. So it's not a one-shot deal. It's not something that you can say, oh, that's hypocrite. I'll stop doing that, and you're no longer a hypocrite. No, we practice hypocrisy in so many different ways, and that allows me to always have something to talk about. Okay, so these two rules, if you're willing to listen to information and not resort to the use of force, and you're going to recognize that hypocrisy is the source of a lot of our problems. And how is hypocrisy the source of a lot of our problems? Because hypocrisy, double standards, when it is baked into the laws and regulations of our society, that becomes injustice. Now, obviously, if your parents are hypocritical, then it's injustice for you, but only for you in your family. But as a society, if the laws themselves treat some people differently from other people, right? They target one group over against another group, then that becomes injustice. So I always say that hypocrisy is the root of all injustice. A lot of people come to school, they want to fight injustice, which is fantastic. However, they don't know what the source of all of that injustice is. Now, why is this important? Well, because what are problems, right? A lot of people today, they struggle with so many problems, and the problems in our society and in our own personal lives, they seem to multiply, right? As technology, as society develops and advances, it just seems that we have more problems. Now, why is that? Perhaps we have to understand what a problem actually is. Whatever problem, whatever field you're in and you encounter a so-called problem, what is that? All a problem is a sign that you have reached the limit of your knowledge. You have reached the end of your knowledge. You ran out of knowledge. The knowledge that you have is not enough to understand what it is that you are facing. And maybe a lot of the people around you also lack that knowledge. And so they say, yeah, that's a pretty big problem, okay? An easy way to understand this is imagine a small child, 4 or 5 years old, and they're crying, and you go up to the child and you say, hey, what's wrong? And they say, oh, there's this problem. I can't solve this problem. And you, being a little bit older and having a little bit more life experience, you say, oh, no, that's not here. Just do it this way. And then you solve the problem. And so the original situation of this young child being so upset is because they lacked knowledge, right? And so we need more knowledge. We need more information in order to find better solutions or how to resolve whatever pickle that we happen to be in that moment. Now, this also becomes, I'm dropping a lot of information on you in this introduction, but believe me, there's a point to it. So, and the reason why we need to have more information in order to resolve these problems is because people today, because of the way that conversations have changed and the need to always be right, people have begun to feel hopeless. So we'll talk about a lot of issues in class, and a lot of people just won't have anything really to say. And the reason is because it's sort of out of their hands. There's nothing that they can do. And that is indicative of hopelessness, right? Why even bother? What's the point of all of this? You know, these kinds of expressions come from an attitude of hopelessness. But if you understand that we can access, and even by ourselves through at least what I hope some of the methods that I'm going to be teaching you through this podcast, that you'll be able to get at more information that sometimes maybe is if withheld from you, then maybe we begin to realize that it's not so much about being right or wrong, but rather it's about finding something better. And once you realize that it's not about being right or wrong, but recognizing that the information we have is the information that we have. And so all we have to do is try to gather more information. Once you realize how to do this, that you can do it, then you can restore hope in yourself And also, if you become a leader or a leader of a family, a leader, an alpha among your friends, whatever, you can then teach them how to have hope as well. And that's all I'm going to try to achieve through this podcast. Not try to tell you what the right answer is, but teach you how to get at more information so that you can make better choices for yourself and get out of that hopeless funk that so many people are in today. And if this is something you want to listen to, I will see you in the next podcast.